Today I'll be turning this random pile of snaps and leather into this key holding dangler. Anyways, first things first, I squared up the dangler using my square and went in for the cut with my new head knife. Next, I go to mark the spots where I will punch rivet holes into the leather using an artist marker. I also mark the places where I'll use a belt end punch to cut out the indents for where the keyring will sit. Grabbing my hole punching tool, I punch the first hole and show the camera my clean punched out hole. This here is an edge beveler. If you are a leather worker and you don't have one, I highly recommend getting one as it will greatly increase the look and feel of every project you make. After all the edges are beveled, I go in with a punch and punch out the indents where the ring will sit once the whole piece is put together. I can continue on to the next part of the project, which is marking out the stitching holes with a pricking iron. I chose to mark the leather that way, but I later decided to just send the entire pricking iron through. After I marked the leather, I decided, like I said, just to ram the entire thing through so that stitching later would be easier. Now comes my favorite part of any leather project. Dyeing the leather close to the color you want it to be. I go in light passes over and over for complete coverage. I have learned that if you just do 1 or 2 passes, the leather doesn't really absorb the dye and the colorization doesn't appear uniform. Also don't forget to dye the edges of the leather piece. I chose to dye the back of the dangler here too, but you could choose to leave yours without. Both look nice. I now grab my special leather dye removing device and gently place my dangler on the special leather dye removing device, pressing firmly to blot any dye that didn't soak into the piece. To my astonishment, there was very little, if any, dye that needed to be removed. Using the same set device, I will buff the leather with light pressure. At this point, I am comparing the in-process dangler to a previously made one just to make sure I didn't forget anything. I grab my letter stamps and stamp on the initials of the client I'm making the dangler for. If you do this right after you dyed the leather, like I am, you do not need a lot of pressure. I now coat the entire project in Canova cream. It's a wax sealer that makes the leather a bit more water resistant, with the added benefit of it being even more shiny. Once the wax dries and is absorbed, I use the same cloth from before and buff it clean, developing the shine. And here it is up close, next to the other one I made earlier. I use the head knife to give a nice effect to the end of the leather where the snap will be. This will also limit damage to the strap. Next, onto my personal favorite thing to hate about leathercraft, burnishing the edges. The final result looks too nice to skip the step. One thing to note here, you do not need a lot of pressure while doing this. I try to emphasize this point by holding it very gingerly with my thumb and pointer finger, buffing every edge. On the hard to reach spots, I use the sharp end using the same light pressure. Grabbing my granite circle, I prepare to attach snaps to the dangler. Using my snap anvil, I hammer the snap into place and prepare for the next snap, lining up the post with the striking tool. There was a time in my life that setting snaps was an impossibility, and every time I do it now, I have to check to see if the snaps work well. Each and every time they do, I'm amazed and thankful that I don't have to go and get the hacksaw out and try again. I will now get out my box of waxed threads and choose which color I want the stitching to be. Is this going to be one of the times I am adventurous and choose a different color besides tan? Nah, tan just looks so classy, I can't miss an opportunity to use it. Now I try to calculate how much thread I will need in my head while I amuse myself by yoinking on the thread and watching the spool spin around my finger. I cut off the thread and prepare the needles, all while almost forgetting to add the metal ring for the keys. I now stitch up the dangler and tie a square knot into the ends of the thread and cut the needles free. However, this leaves me with these 2 pieces of string left over from the stitching. I could have left them, but I prefer to burn off the excess. Once that is done, I try to be cool and close the dangler with a single flick of my fingers, but fail and close it the regular way. I take the keys off my first dangler and attach them to the new one so I can properly test out the completed project. The cool thing about this design is you don't have to undo your belt in order to attach the dangler to it. You simply undo the snap and slip it on under and around the belt and complete the snap. Oh, and it also can freely slide along the belt as well. Here I secure the keys into my pocket and stand in triumph that I didn't mess up a simple project. I also tested the strength of the snap and was pleasantly surprised how strong it was yet easy to release when I wanted it off. I was happy with the design and made a couple more. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.